produce green hydrogen. The hydrogen will be converted into ammonia, and the reason you do that is because hydrogen is not a dense energy source, right? And you have to convert it into ammonia to ship it economically. It's a very simple process to do that. And you then store the ammonia until you've got a boatload. You might put it on the boat and send it to whatever market you've sold the product to, right? So that's a broad description of the project in and of itself. We've, at the moment, the only application we've made to government at their request as being the first phase of the project, and the first phase of the project is 164 wind turbines on the Port au Port Peninsula and the hydrogen plant. And the minute that they have got their arms around that, then we've got an application which we're going to submit for the other two sites, right? The Lewis Hill site and the Flat Bay site, right? Which will be similar size to the site here on the Port au Port Peninsula. So, wind farms aren't new. Of course, there's thousands of wind farms around the world and hundreds more under construction as we speak. But combining wind farms with hydrogen plants is new. There's really a technology challenge here. Hydrogen is a commodity that's been around for a very long time. But green hydrogen has not been, and the reason it has not been is because it costs a lot more money to produce green hydrogen than it does conventionally generated hydrogen using the SMR and natural gas. It costs almost 3 times as much. So the market has not been willing to pay for green hydrogen until such time as climate change began to infiltrate government policy, and government said, look, we've got to reduce our carbon footprint, and we've got to reduce the consumption and use of fossil fuels, and we've got targets, and green hydrogen is being seen by governments around the world as a big part of the solution, not just for the conventional uses of hydrogen in steel plants and refineries, but because there's so many other uses for hydrogen too, as fuel cells in cars and homes, trucks, large container vessels, and so on, trains, locomotive engines, trainers, and so on. So there are a number of projects around the world that are under construction. Our products has got a large project now is under construction in Saudi Arabia at the moment, and we're learning from that, and learning about the engineering challenges and so on. They admitted they were not experts in wind. Their energy source is solar because they're in Saudi. Our energy source is wind. That's why we brought that in Northland into the equation. So what does this all mean? It means that we are trying to build a green energy solution, if you like, here on the west coast of Newfoundland that will be the first of its kind in Canada, amongst others around the world. And this is a global competition. There will be projects around the world. And our government, both provincial and federal government, are anxious to see this happen. Obviously, within the right kind of policy guidelines and conditions and so on. So we have submitted a preliminary environmental review to the government. We've asked for a permit, but the permit will have conditions, and we are in the process of agreeing and negotiating those conditions, and we can't tell you what the conditions will be. That's government's right to tell us what the conditions are, our right to tell government. But let me give you an example of what the conditions will be. So one of the things that the government has asked us to do is carry out a year-long bird, plant, and bat study. Okay? And we've issued a contract for that for a engineering firm called Stantec, who do these kinds of things for other wind farms and other projects around the country and in the United States. That will determine the extent to which the association, if you like, between wind farm and birds or rare plants is a problem. The government will get that study, and they will say, okay, well, you've got to do this and you've got to do that, or you can't put a turbine here because this is too close to where there might be a material population of a particular plant species that we don't want disturbed. And so all of that will come out, if you like, of the study that's being undertaken now. There are a host of other studies being done around things like road grades, soil conditions where the turbines are going to be located, and because the wind industry itself is quite a mature industry, there are very many number of specialist companies. So for instance, I'll give you an example. So the wind specialists that we've hired to help us are DNV, which is a Norwegian company. The people who design the foundations or the bases on which the turbines sit, right, the foundations for the towers, it's an American company called Right? These are companies who are specialists in their field. They will be poking around this summer, helping us do the project assessment, determine whether, they'll be doing what's called micro-siting. So they'll say, okay, well, DNV, the wind people said, well, this wind turbine should be here based on the soil conditions. That doesn't make any sense because the soil conditions right there are not particularly conducive, and you should move it over here 100 feet or something because the soil conditions over there are more suitable, if you like, to support a wind tower. So all of that work is going on. We hope with the appropriate permitting in place that we'll be able to begin construction next year, in late spring or early summer, this time essentially next year. And we would also begin construction of the hydrogen plant in the port at the same time. And our hope would be that by the end of 2024, we would have the very first hydrogen in the market, and then the construction plan over all 3 phases would be a 3-year construction plan. So the construction activity would finish here and then migrate to the other 2 sites, and we continue to receive turbines and erect them and grow the plant as the whole sort of project came on stream. We feel like we'll be operational in late 2024. What are some of the other components of the program? So when we didn't know, when we realized that we didn't know about wind, nothing over wind, frankly. Other than I've been in Europe, we've got a lot of business in Europe, so I've been in Europe a bunch of times. I've been around wind farms for 20 years, and you see them online, and you see them driving along. That was about as much I know about wind farms. Sean and I got about a wind farm school in Holland that teaches disciplines. It teaches mechanics, engineers, all the kinds of professional disciplines that go into designing and building and operating a wind farm are taught at this school. Very unique school. And the Japanese government found out about this school a few years ago and asked them to come and start a similar school in Japan. So we called them up and said, do you have a program for guys like us who don't know anything about wind farms? We don't have a lot of time, so what can we learn in a couple of days? And they said, we do have a program for dummies like you, and so come on over and we'll see what we can knock into your heads over a couple of days. And we went there, we were very impressed, and so that led to a conversation which resulted in us partnering with them, and it's our intention to bring their school, or a facsimile of their school, to the college here. College of the North Atlantic. And so the president of the College of the North Atlantic is going to go to Holland in 3 weeks' time and meet with the people over there with a view to us sponsoring the school here. And why is that important? Because there is no school in North America. Why should we send people to Europe to learn about this? Why can't we get ahead of the industry and teach people here, not just for our wind farm, but for other wind farms? There's all sorts of wind farms being planned off the east coast of the United States. All those folks have to be trained. Let's train them here. So that's sort of one of the features, if you like, or add-ons to the project that's sort of not directly related to the project. I don't want to go on and on and on and occupy all the time for the meeting, because I want to give everybody an opportunity to ask any questions you've got. Would just come from a meeting in which we try to answer everybody's questions. We weren't able to answer all those questions because some of the questions were quite technical in nature, and we promised to come back with experts who could answer questions about noise, and not noise, because we show the slide as to what noise is, but is, for instance, noise affected by the peculiarities of the topography of the area, right? So if a wind turbine is up in the air on a ridge, right, is the noise it produces different from the noise it might produce if it's down in not on a high point and the wind is sort of circulating around, and does that make for more or less noise? And I don't know the answer to that. We've got access, obviously, to people in Pattern and Northland who are competent wind engineers who can answer that question. Very legitimate question. We'll come back with people like that. We had other questions around, we've heard that wind farms cause nausea and headaches, right? And I can't comment on, I'm not a doctor, and nor am I an environmental scientist, but we've been told that there is no evidence that wind farms cause any medical issues at all.
Yeah, but I just want to make a comment on that before the facts got lost in the system.
Yeah, sure, but that's a legitimate question, and so we owe people an answer. So just give you an example of the kinds of questions that were asked at the previous meeting that we couldn't answer, and I don't doubt that there will be questions from all of you at this meeting that I might not be able to answer, and I don't want you to think that there's a lost opportunity, if you like, because I can't answer the question, you're not going to get the question answered. You will get the question answered. It'll be from somebody else other than me. Okay? So let's, we've got one of the questions that everybody asks everywhere is, how many turbines am I going to see? How close are they to my house? To what extent is this going to impact on my views, and am I going to be sort of visually encumbered, if you like, by this prospect of seeing windmills around me? So what we asked, are we ready to go with this? Sure. Yeah, so what we asked our engineering company to do was to take footage of the entire Port-au-Port Peninsula, 7 or 8 communities, and put it up, and then show us what the existing environment is like without the wind farms, and then digitally impose the wind turbines in the locations that they're proposed. And so people can see, sorry, I don't mean to be in your way, so people can see the impact of these. Sorry, let me stand in the back here so I'm not in anybody's way. Nobody wants to see me anyway.
So how far away are they from the road?
Yeah, so we'll show you from different views. So there's, you can see there's a couple of turbines there, and this is from what location is this? So this is a sign that takes into it.
These have had to be enhanced as well to show up on the video?
So they're whitened, they made them brighter so that they'd stand out.
So you could see them.
So you could see.
Are they to scale in terms of height? Like
Yes,
what
they
height
are.
is that
That's
turbine?
exact.
So are they
That's
600 feet?
actually, that's a great question, ma'am. So our application to government has been for a turbine height of 120 meters.
Okay.
That's the maximum. That's what you're seeing here is 120 meters. Our wind engineers think they'll be less than that, but that's the maximum they will be. They could be 100 meters, they could be 90 meters, and we'll determine that through the wind testing that we're going to be doing through the course of the summer. But they will not be any greater than the height you see here.
Okay.
That's the
While
maximum.
we're on that, what's the blade length then for that size of turbine?
Do you know the answer to that?
Yeah, it's approximately 80,
Okay.
Okay.
right? So
And each turbine is 6 megawatts.
if I could just for a second,
Yeah.
back to John's point, inside the submission to government, we've taken a very conservative approach so that we don't have to go back in future when there are changes, because there will be changes and adjustments made. There will be changes and adjustments made, so we went to worst case scenario so that the changes that you would see on a go-forward basis would be something that's less dramatic, exactly.
And that conservative approach is reflected throughout the submission. Job estimates are conservative as well. We took that approach with every aspect of it.
So it's not up to 200 meters, it's 120.
No, you're seeing 120,
We're seeing
120, but we expect it'll be much less than that, yes.
Right.
So that's the
That's the
the
maximum.
hub height.
Yes.
So what is the distance from the road there to when you're going up on the mountain here? What is the distance?
Very close.
It is.
No, it's not, there, so.
From the picture I saw, it's
Yes,
close.
no, let me just, that's a great question, and your point is very close. It's like, what does very close mean? There is no, the turbines around Cape St. George, the closest they are to a road is over a kilometer. They're not closer than 1 kilometer to the road.
Is that the same with all communities?
But what about houses at the
Yeah,
the two
that's
that are
another,
closest?
that's another great question, we had that same question. So in the entire Port Peninsula, all 164 turbines, the closest any turbine is to any building is 700 meters, and that building is not a house.
And where is that?
That's
It's a mechanical shop, so,
Okay,
No, but where is the where is that?
where is that?
yeah, I'll have to get it for you. 'Cause
Oh, okay.
all I did was I went back inside the submission and cleaned off where we were in terms of proximity.
and that
And the closest one was to an outbuilding, and it's described as a mechanical trade shop.
Okay, so
So-
somebody actually works in that building.
Yes.
So what we'll do is we'll
Yeah.
get it for you.
Yeah, okay.
Can we stop that right
Yes,
there,
of course.
please?
Yeah, stop that, stop that.
I want to ask about those two turbines there.
You can wind it, roll it back.
Yeah.
Hey, those two.
Yep,
So, that doesn't look a kilometer from where the photograph
it
is
is
taken.
in.
There's a road on top of the mountain up there.
Yeah, I
There's
know.
another road up there.
Yeah.
So that's way closer.
Yeah, well, because that road doubles back.
Yeah, it doubles back towards Maryland.
Is that Cape St. George?
That's Cape St. George.
I mean, that's our backyard.
Yeah,
That's our backyard, exactly.
yeah, it's more than a kilometer from, sorry, it's more than a kilometer from this road.
Oh,
And
definitely.
your point is there's a road up there.
No,
Goes
the
around.
road goes where the turbine
Loops
is.
over.
Exactly.
So there's a back road, that's what you're saying.
No,
No, road goes towards
it's a
Maryland.
hairpin turn. It's
Oh,
a
yeah, but
hairpin
there's no
turn.
more than a kilometer on the other side of the peninsula either. No.
It's closer than a kilometer to 463, which loops back over, because it goes right next to it there, as far as we can see.
We'll
Yeah.
give you a written confirmation of the setback distance.
These are pretty strong.
I just made a note of it.
What is the distance between the two, like approximately near that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Can we do a scale on that? Yeah. I mean, look, here's well, John is seeing we can give you a better answer. We drove from Lourdes just now to here, which somebody told me was 37 kilometers. And there are 35 turbine sites from there to there. So, it may not all be, sort of even, but if you were to take 37 kilometers divided by 35, you would say the turbines are a kilometer apart.
That's a lot.
That takes up more
That's a
land.
hell of a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
And they're spread out, so
Yeah, no,
that takes up more land.
that's a lot of
across.
distance between the kilometers. If you see wind farms in Europe, you'll see them way more densely packed than that.
So is it because of the size of the wind turbine that is that much closer? Because the larger the size, it would be more distant?
No, it's because you want to take maximum effect of the wind and you don't want any disturbance from one turbine to the other. In other words, you want completely unencumbered air. You don't want one turbine disturbing the air even a little bit on another turbine. So you can, you site them as far apart so that this one turbine can't possibly affect another turbine. That's how you get, pardon me? Possibly, yeah. Yeah.
The other view that you had there with the town sign shows windmills in the wilderness area that's shown that way by the town, that there's nothing in your study that seemed to indicate there was any problem with the town itself, because I know we extended the town planning boundary out that way, that the dimensions of the town go out that way, and you've got a bunch of windmills in the wilderness area. Did you know that was what you were doing?
So let me answer the question by saying this to you. We've applied to the province. If we are in town lands, then it's up to the town as to whether they're going to grant us a permit or not.
So the town can say you have to move that window?
Yeah.
And you'll have to move it?
Yes.
Okay. Can you have that in writing?
It's your authority.
Their authority.
Yeah, sorry, it's your authority. Yes. So if there are turbines inside the town limits, then you have authority over whether or not we can build it or not.
That leads to the other question. What kind of revenue accrues to the town as a result of your windmills in their limits?
Yeah, so did everybody hear this question? Because it's a really important question. And we had, ladies, it's important that everybody get all the information. So, we had this question and the question is, what economic benefits accrue to the town, right? And that same issue came up at the last meeting, and the point arose out of a conversation in which this seems like a project that's going to deliver a lot of benefit to Stephenville and not a lot of benefit to the communities in the Port of Portland, right? So our initial reaction to that was it's going to benefit everybody, and it's going to benefit everybody because it's economic activity for everybody, it's jobs for everybody, and it's a tax base for everybody, right? That was our answer. And their response was, okay, we get the jobs, we get the fact that there's going to be spin-offs for the local business community, we get all that, but, you know, we don't have the right to charge taxes here because we're a district or whatever we are. Local service district.
Yes.
And so what we said is, look, what we'll do is this. We'll enter into an agreement with all the communities in the Port of Port Peninsula. Right? And you need to form yourselves into some kind of an association or a committee to negotiate with us. And if we spend, and I'm just using illustrative here, if we spend $100 in Stephenville, and Stephenville charges us $10 in tax, and we spend that same $100 on the Port of Port Peninsula, then we will pay the communities on the Port of Port Peninsula that same $10, right? Whether you're legally entitled to it or not. And it's up to you to decide how to disperse that $10 amongst yourselves. We can't make that decision, nor do we want to go near that, because there will be issues around, well, you know, you got more jobs than we got, and we've got a larger population, or, you know, who knows what the issues are. So, you know, do you want to use just population as a measure, if you like, by which you decide how best to distribute the money? But that's your call.
And that's another question.
John,
Sorry, yes, sir, go ahead.
In my conversations with the librarian at the House of Assembly,
Yes,
she indicated that the policy of the government is that in a municipal area, that they can set the terms of where the windmills go.
yes,
Is that what you agree with?
yes,
And that's the kind of thing that you signed to?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Is that the same for local service districts?
Look, you're asking me a legal question, I can't answer it. I know that our permitting authority, apart from the town,
Yeah.
is the province of Newfoundland and Labrador.
Okay.
And in the case, for instance, of the hydrogen plant, because it's inside the town limits, the town is the permitting authority, but we have certain provincial regulations that we have to respond to as well, right? But we actually get a permit to build the plant from the town of Stephenville, right? So to this gentleman's earlier question about, you know, can we build a windmill inside the, or sorry, a turbine inside the town of Cape St. George? If it's a legally constituted town and you have authority over the lands in your town, then no, we can't, not unless we get a permit from you. This young lady has been dying to answer the question.
It's about the same thing, because I'm representing through our code and as well as mainland, we are not officially towns, nor do we have town boundaries.
Yeah.
So we are in fear that you guys are going to encroach onto our land because we don't have any set boundaries. So you guys can basically set the boundaries wherever you live.
And that's a totally legitimate concern, and we are not going to apply to you because you don't have any legal authority to grant us a permit. So that's where the province comes in, and the province has that legal authority, and it's the province that gets to determine whether we can put a turbine and where we can't.
Well,
Right?
the province didn't even send us
Right?
any information on this project at all.
Yeah.
We didn't receive an email, a letter in the mail, nothing. We didn't even know this project was on the go. We had no information. I represent Shea's Cove. I'm representing Laura Cove, Ship Cove, Jerry's Nose, Black Duck Broken Winter Houses today. And none of the local service districts were notified of this project.
Yeah.
So the government, for whatever reason, doesn't want the local service districts involved. Okay, so it's disrespectful, very disrespectful.
So here's a mistake that we made. I'm not gonna speak for government, that's not my job. Government can speak for
It
itself.
wasn't your job, I don't think, to send out to local service districts, was it? It was the government's job, wasn't it?
It was,
Right.
it was our job to engage with you and communicate with you and tell you about our project.
But how did you know who we were if it was not for the government?
So let me,
Right.
let me explain to
Okay.
you what happened, okay? So we came here about 6 weeks ago,
Yes.
and I personally called the mayor of all those districts down there, right? And/or I couldn't sometimes get the mayor, so I spoke to the town manager, and I invited everybody from the mayor, just, let me finish, from the mayor's office and any member of council to a meeting in Stephenville.
Okay.
And we had a first meeting,
Mhm.
right? And the meeting was to describe the project and answer questions.
Right.
And then we said, and then after that meeting, several people came up and said, well, I want you to come to my community
Mhm.
and speak to my community. And so we had the chief of the Halakoo Nation there, and he wanted us to speak to members of his tribal council,
Mhm.
right? So this is the fourth time we've been back in that 6 weeks.
Okay.
And we're happy to come as often as we need to come and talk to as many people, because it's our obligation to be transparent and our obligation to answer all the questions, and there's no illegitimate questions. Anybody who's got a concern has the right to have that concern addressed.
Okay.
And when people may not like our answers, but they're deserving of an answer.
Mhm.
So that's not government's role, that's our role. How government carries out its regulatory function in terms of sanctioning or not sanctioning this project that's for the government to decide. We have to live by the laws, we don't make the laws.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense because the local service districts take up the majority of the base land that you are putting these turbines on. So why wouldn't they reach out to the people who are controlling these communities,
Yeah.
running these communities? It doesn't make sense to me. It's so disrespectful that, it makes me sick, it really does.
Yeah.
And it's pissed off a lot of people, I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of pissed off people in our communities.
And
They
maybe,
don't want you to know what's going on.
and maybe we need to take some of the blame for that by not understanding that it wasn't just mayors of communities, it was also service districts. I mean, here's our naivety, okay?
Yeah.
So I come from Halifax, right, which I think of as a reasonably good-sized city, but small by large city standards. It's almost 400,000 people, right?
Yeah.
This whole area is 25,000 people.
Yeah.
So we had 7 communities
Right.
represented at our very first meeting. We thought that was a pretty, inclusive kind of meeting, right?
Yes.
7 communities, 25,000 people. How could it not be, kind of thing, right?
Right.
I did not, this is my ignorance,
I
I
don't
did not
blame you.
understand that there were also service districts which were not represented by the towns and the mayors
This is
and
an
the councils.
environmental assessment that involves people in our community, so
Yeah.
why weren't we involved?
Yeah.
It's a government question, really, it is.
Speaking of government questions, is there any intention on the government's part to bring in a piece of legislation that actually governs the development of wind turbines in the future?
Yes, so that's a great question. So here's what I can tell you. So the government, there were 2 pieces of legislation when we came along. The one was the piece of legislation that had given rise to the wind farm in Bermuda. Okay? And legislation had been put in place to govern the conditions under which that wind farm was permitted, which is, I understand it, the only wind farm in the province at the moment. Okay? And then the Williams government imposed a moratorium on further wind farms when they decided to go ahead with the Muskrat Falls project, right? So when we approached the government told us 2 things. They said the Bermuda legislation is not robust enough, so we're not going to permit anybody on the back of just the Bermuda legislation, and we intend to update that legislation. That was point number 1. Point number 2 is that we are removing the moratorium. So if you want to make an application, get yourself organized, and we'll obviously obviously we'll make an announcement in due course as to when the moratorium is going to be lifted, and we made that announcement, whatever it was, a couple of months ago. And by that time, we had, we were at their urging quite far down the line in terms of getting our proposals.
So are they gonna go ahead with
So-
a piece of legislation with hearings on it as well, so that they can input from people? about
So look, I
know it's not your job.
I can't tell you what the government has planned. What the government did with us was they said, okay, we want to see this in your environmental report. We want to see that in your environmental report. These are the issues that we want you to address. And the filing that is now up publicly on the government's website, which many of you will have seen, some of you which have, take my hat off to you, have actually taken the trouble to read, good for you. And that was our response to the government's request. So that response of ours is beyond the requirements that were in place in the current legislation for the Vermuse wind farm. And some of those requirements, which they've suggested to us that we have to address, will be incorporated in the new legislation. What else they might want to put in, that's up to the government, right? We can't.
Because this is, even if your three-part development goes forward, this is not the last one that's gonna be
No,
there.
absolutely not.
Newfoundland's one of its major resources
Is
is
wind.
wind.
Yes,
And there's
absolutely.
gonna be these farms right around the entire province, I
Yes.
would suggest.
Yeah.
So therefore, they really need a
Oh,
nice
yeah.
piece of
No,
legislation. to put right in.
absolutely.
But so far, basically, what we're dealing with is you fellows and your commitments and whatever we get through the environmental assessment. That's it.
Yeah, I wouldn't, that sounds sort of like it's pretty superficial, and I don't want you to think that that's been their response. I can tell you that the government, does the government want the project to proceed? Yes, they want the project to proceed. This is a very significant investment.
It is fast.
And yes, it is fast moving, but there are market-based reasons for that, and I'm happy to explain those. No, it's a.
Oh, for sure, I can
So,
appreciate that.
but the government has consulted widely and likes the fact that we've got the two companies in Canada who are the largest wind companies and are very legitimate businesses. One of them is owned by every single Canadian. CPPIB is the most broadly held institution in the country. Every Canadian pays into the CPPIB. This is one of the shareholders. So, these are very legitimate, responsible people, and the government is very interested in understanding best practices for wind farms around the world. And I don't doubt that you will see in the new legislation some, they'll be cherry picking, well, we like this legislation here, we like this piece of that legislation over there. But what form that legislation takes is really up to the government. All we can do is live by the rules that the government tells us we have to live by. We don't get any role in making those rules, if you'd appreciate. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any confirmed markets or potential markets?
Yes, ma'am, we do. Yes.
Can you divulge who they are?
Yes, sure. The German government has stood up or put in place a Crown Corporation. That's a company that's owned by the German government. And what that government is going to, or what that agency is going to do is buy hydrogen from companies like us and then decide where they want to introduce that hydrogen into the German economy. Do we want it to go into the steel mills? Do we want it to go into fuel cells for trucks? Do we want it to go into oil refineries? Or do we want to go into making agriculture, fertilizer for agriculture purposes? That's their decision, but the purpose of them doing that is that makes our marketing job easy because we don't have to run around and talk to all those potential customers and convince them that they should pay the premium associated with green. The German government will make that decision, and they'll make the decision as to what price level they set for some of these new industrial users, and whether or not those users have to be incented in some way to, either through regulation or price. But that's who our market is. Yes, sir.
Personal comment.
Yes, sir.
I may be a little,
Thank you for coming.
I may be a little slow here, but I'm thinking right now that the mills, that these things are going to be put in place and we have nothing we can do to stop that. Am I wrong?
The mill.
Then let the mill
The
pay.
project will go ahead whether we like it or not.
No, look,
Turbines.
Except that the town can say where they go.
so the owners of this project are institutions. I'm not an institution, I'm just a small guy, like you, okay? And they're very reputationally concerned. They're very reputationally concerned. Look, I'm 74 years old. I've worked hard all my life. You know, the only thing I've really got that's important to me is my reputation. I don't really give a damn about money. I do care about it because it's a measure and it's how I incent my people and it's how I grow businesses. It's how I create economic activity. But most important thing to me, after working for 45 or 50 years, is my reputation. Right? And I'd like to think I don't have a bad reputation. Not everybody likes me, but I don't leave behind bad news. Right? The first time I came to Newfoundland in 1976 to open a buy station for lobsters on the Port Peninsula was in Piccadilly. I hired a man there, worked for us for 24 years. He's dead now, but you ask his family about how the company treated him and whether he was looked after and whether or not we were an honorable company to work for. That's what we think. It doesn't matter what business we're in, that's who we are. So my point in telling you this is, look, this is a fantastic green energy project, right? The country should be proud of this project. We should be proud of it. You should be proud of it. We need to convince you that indeed that this is a project that you should be proud of. Now, having said that, if you come back to us and you say, look, let me pick an example. We don't like these 3 turbines out at the end of the point here, right? And it's a... I'm being illustrated. And you say that, other than that, we would be supportive. And we really want you to get rid of those 3 turbines. So the government's not going to say that to us, because the government is going to say, look, blah, 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 environment, birds, plants, all those kinds of things. We've got to decide, do we want you as a friend, or do we want you as an enemy? And I'm not going to guarantee, because I don't know what you're going to ask us to do. I can promise you, we will listen to you. And if your requests are reasonable and legitimate and have some basis that's sound, we will, I promise you, we will listen. I'm not going to guarantee you that, this, that, or the other thing, but we need to have these, we're not starting construction for a year. There's lots of time for us to have those conversations. And if I have to come back over here 3 or 4 more times, I'm more than happy to do so. We heard about your concerns about 9 or 10 days ago, and it took us a week to get here. Right? I've had a couple of letters and emails from residents of this community. I promise you they didn't wait 24 hours to get a response. Right? And I showed up. I didn't send somebody. I'm here myself. Right? So we've got nothing to hide. We want to work with you. We want to listen to you. We want to make you our friends. We want you to think, hey, this is a great project for us. We've told people, look, if anybody wants to come and work for us, we are going to we're going to have a job fair in late fall or early next year. We will post all the disciplines that we require, various kinds of engineers, mechanics, and so on. And if anybody in the broader community wants to apply for those jobs, we will pay 100% of their education. If they come back to work for us after they get their education, they don't owe us anything. If they go off and work for someone else, they got to pay us back. Right? Because we'd like to see the jobs that we create go to local folks. And we're prepared to put in place substantial financial incentives to help people take advantage of those job opportunities.
Well, it's going to be hard to get the trust from the people now because the way you went about it and the way that people found out on the NTV News. I mean, I have petitions here that's just started, and people are very upset because you had the statistics show that there was an aging population, and a lot of the people here are older, and they're very upset because they don't have Facebook friends or hashtag or anything like that. And they feel that, even though their children are gone away, they had no choice, like you said, they had to work. At the same time, these children may come back to retire because a lot of people up from here, if you had to get them away, and want to come back here on the Port area to retire. there may not be any land or any beauty or any scenery for them to come back to. And I know that hurt a lot of people, and for you to gain trust is going to be an issue.
So, look, I can't defend the fact that we didn't engage with you 6 weeks ago when we first came here. We should
No,
have.
this was before that.
Well,
Long before. I mean, Bill 60 was lifted in April or March?
April.
April.
Okay. And the proposal came out in June. And you signed, or who signed on June 10th?
Mhm.
Okay, and then we had people on Facebook sharing all the information,
Mhm.
and we were just blindsided. And, we weren't expecting a project so big to come out on Port Peninsula.
Mhm.
But we have still almost 5,000 people here.
Mhm.
And in Stephenville is not much more.
7,000.
And you chose this area without even coming and meeting with the people. Yes, you have mayors of the town. Yes, you have support in wherever you're going to go. But at the end of the day, we also support Stephenville. All the people here shop in Stephenville.
Sure.
We all support. So what happened to us here? You left us in the dark, and right now you're here today and you're proposing, which is almost not saying too late, but you're going to have a lot of convincing to do.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to say I'm sorry as often as you want me to say I'm sorry. I would say to you, when we first came here 6 weeks ago, we thought we were meeting with the broader community. As you say, there's 5,000 people. We met with 5 mayors from the Port Peninsula. And how could we not think that 5 mayors and the councillors didn't represent 5,000 people? That's my point.
There are only 4 municipalities or 4
Sorry.
peninsula?
Yeah, we had 4, sorry.
And we didn't go, so you met with 3 on the peninsula.
Yeah, we met with, who did we meet with?
You met with Port West, Port East.
And East again.
So, in Port East and Port West.
Yeah.
They're separate. Yeah, so there's 2 right there. Yeah. Yeah.
It was also brought to my attention that our MHA was not invited to that meeting, so I just wanted to question him on why he was not invited. I think if the first person who should have received that call was him,
Yeah.
and he told me as well he was left in the dark. I felt like this was happening under the table, even though municipalities were invited, and I understand they were. It seemed like all the information was released to the media or released to us after these meetings took
Yeah,
place.
so first of all, let me say, we didn't release any information to media. None. We have not issued any kind of a press release.
But we did speak to Tony Wakem.
Yes.
Way back in the very beginning.
Yeah, no, we did. And so when we came here and we began to identify, because we didn't know who do we speak to, right? We invited all those mayors that I said, some came, some didn't, right? And we had that first meeting. Then we said to people, who else should we speak to? And people said, well, one guy from one community would say, and I don't know who that would be, but they said, well, we're focused on our community. We want you to come to our community. So we came back. We met, as I say, with the Halifax First Nations people. We've been to the Flat Bay area. We've come back to speak to Stephenville again. And we only found out about your concerns, and maybe this is our bad, and if it is, I'm more than happy to accept the blame for being short-sighted. But we haven't kept anybody waiting. We responded, and we did call people like your MHA. I personally called them and had a conversation with them after the meeting. I should have invited them to the meeting, you're right. But it wasn't malicious on our part. We're not trying to hide anything. Obviously, all the information is posted on the government's website. We couldn't apply until the moratorium came off, and that came off, as you say, in April. We then applied, and we then came, as a consequence of that, to the community for the very first time. And, should we have been here for a week and gone around and maybe, sort of seen everybody day after day? Maybe we should have. But look, we are where we are. And we accept the fact that you've got legitimate concerns and we need to respond to them. And we're here trying to do just that. And we'll come back as often as we need to.
Yes, because the project of the signs, you are stating that it must take some time to do all your research.
Yes.
So how long did it take for you to do all the research for the Port Peninsula before this came out into?
So we started working in the whole area, not just the Port Peninsula. We started working on the whole area about 7 or 8 months ago.
So
And
this
we,
one gets a-
and, yes, and let me say this to you, and I haven't said this, and I should have said this a long time ago.
Yeah.
We don't know whether or not this project is financially viable yet. We don't know that.
I
And
don't think it is. I think you're throwing your money in the wind.
if we do, it'll be a lot of money. A project of this size has something called an FID, Final Investment Decision, right? And you don't make that final investment decision till you've got a whole bunch of information, right? And that's why we've got a lot of people now with experts from around the world who know how to assess these kinds of things, working on trying to give us a full assessment. We will have, absolutely come to in a sec, we will have the information necessary to make an FID or final investment decision by the end of September. We're hoping to make that investment decision sometime in October. And so it's very important people understand we are spending money as we speak. We're doing a lot of work because we can't make a good decision if we haven't spent that money, hired the best people, and done that work. But we won't know until mid-October whether we've got a project or not.
John,
Sorry, just, excuse me, sir, just, this one. Go ahead.
I have a statement to say and I have a follow-on question afterwards. So, I recognize that your benefits and the benefits of green energy and the jobs as well, but I just want you to recognize as well the land that you're going to be clearing, our land, all our sacrifice, and it's going to change our way of life.
Yeah.
And that's 1,200 acres of cleared land. That's not including the wide roads that you're going to need for the equipment that you're going to have to make to get there, the ditches that you also said you have to need, as well as the cable placement, as well as stations, substations, and areas.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I want to point out, that you have to recognize there's benefits and there's cons, and
Yes.
we are really biting on the cons, and you're biting on the benefits, I'm sorry to tell you.
No, I'm the first to admit that there are costs, right? There are absolute costs, and I'm not denying there are costs. And it's up to you to decide, okay, are the costs consistent with the benefits, and do the benefits outweigh the costs, or the reverse,
Yeah.
right? Absolutely.
And my following question is, the land that you're going for the crown land, are you leasing that, or are you getting a grant for that as well? Are you getting any grants from the government that is public taxpayer money to go for green tax
No.
grants?
Where the government is going to lease the land to us, and they're going to charge us.
And you're going to do any green, like, grants to help with payment of anything? Like because I know you can apply to the government for green grants.
No, we haven't applied to the government for any grants, and we don't intend to.
my question is this, is you were saying that you were going to hire experts who know something about the sound emitted by
We're,
the
yes,
turbines,
yes.
and also the flicker, as I
Yes,
understand it as well. Now, I've seen some stuff that seems to be more on the government's research and others that come off the internet, which are pretty dim. The question I've got is that this expert you hired, I don't think has the gravitas, has the credibility with people here.
No.
And it'd be worthwhile having some group of people from the peninsula who could actually go to places where these turbines exist,
Exactly.
see what kind of sound comes off them, listen to the complaints, listen to what is good about it and everything else, so that when they come back, they can say, we've had a look at it, and if we have it back a kilometer, 2 kilometers, whatever it's going to be, then we won't hear it and we won't see it. But at this point now, if you bring in an expert on it, I'm frightened that you're going to get somebody who's just going to go and stamp it. You know what engineering firms are. You tell them what conclusion you want, and they go and get it for you.
Yeah. So, okay, so let me put this.
The birds of prey on their report.
Let me put this back to you. We're not going to send a whole crowd of people.
No,
all over
I'm
the
not
place.
suggesting it.
If you, what you're asking for is very reasonable. We will respond in reason. So you appoint 3 people from the community. Maybe 3 is the wrong number, maybe it's 4. You come back to us. Some reasonable number of people. And we will take them to several wind farms and expose them to just the issues that you raised, and they can come back and report to the community.
Where's the closest wind farm similar to what you're proposing? From you?
We're going to have to go to Ontario.
Ontario? Why did you pick the Port Peninsula? Give me a second.
Because the wind profile is so favorable. It's a bit like, so look, this is a very, very complicated science.
Okay.
And it's complicated because you think, okay, well, if you've got that area down by Port Bass where trailers blow,
Yeah.
so that wind is no good.
Okay.
And it's no good because it's too gusty. I'm serious, so this is a very, very scientific thing. And what you do is you get a whole bunch of satellite data, because you can gather a whole bunch of satellite. And then what you do is you go to the local airport,
Right.
where you've got 50 years of data, okay? And the mathematic experts build an algorithm which compares the satellite data to this hour-by-hour data, very specific from the airport. And that determines a correlation between, a relationship between the wind data. So when it says, because the space data isn't nearly that specific, right?
But do you know that
So-
your systems are outdated?
Yeah.
So-
And they're way far away from us.
No,
in terms of
no,
wind
no,
velocity.
but you're missing the point. Sorry, I'm not describing the issue. I'll come to you. So what the wind experts want to do is they want to understand the profile of the wind over on an hour by hour basis
Okay.
over a year, right? And they want to do that because if the wind is too gusty, then you've got to feather the turbines, and you can't operate them if the wind gets too hot. Right?
Okay.
So that's not productive. Right? So what you want is you want continuous. Where can you get the most continuous wind within a certain band, right? And the Port Peninsula has the profile, has a very favorable profile, which meets that criteria. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
But once you do the actual net towers and the study using your Doppler effect, and you're supposed to do the whole 12 months of wind records,
Yep.
and at different heights, as you said before.
Yes.
But what if it comes back that we have too many gusts and it becomes unsafe?
Yeah.
Because
It's not-
like you just
so
said,
this
it's
is-
unsafe
no,
and
no,
unproductive if it is gusty.
It's not unsafe. It's never unsafe. The issue is, can you operate the turbine or not, or do you have to shut it down? I mean, when you get hurricanes, you don't see the blades spinning around. They lock them up, and they don't spin. Okay? So it's not a question of it ever being unsafe. It's a question of, are they going to be producing energy for you, or are they not? And if you get too many periods of time when the wind is too high, then you're not able to operate the turbines, and then, there's no economic activity. So that makes no sense. You don't go to where there's just high wind speeds. You go to where there's consistent wind speeds within a certain band, okay? The purpose of the net towers is to confirm the algorithms. It's a bit like you go to the doctor says, gee, I think this is the case, right? You then say, okay, I got to get treatment, but you then say, well, I want a second opinion, right? You want to know that somebody else believes what you believe. So the net towers are essentially a second opinion to confirm that, look, the satellite data is very good,
Yes, but it's not
extremely
perfect.
good.
It's not.
You need to test it against something, so that's why we put up net towers. They're at our expense, not at the government's expense. We're doing this for us. We're not doing this for the government. We're doing this to test our own data. We're taking a risk. Government's not taking any risk. Net towers are for our benefit. We don't have anything to prove
And
to the government.
we're taking the fall on all the landing loss too,
Yeah.
so we are also taking a big
You
fall
will,
as well.
look, the Port Peninsula is whatever it is, a couple 100,000 acres, and are we gonna,
26,000.
pardon me?
26,200.
Okay, and you're gonna lose a
Half.
tiny
Half.
bit. No,
Half.
no, ma'am, absolutely, that is not the case. The red lines are not our property, they are the bands. The only thing that we end up with is the turbine tower on a particular piece of land. Everything else is public property.
But
You can walk around the turbine, you can drive on the roads on your ATVs, you can do anything. We don't own any land, no land is going to be fenced off. The half the land is not going to be, that is not the case, I promise you. That's not, the government only gives us the right to install 164 turbines on the sites that we agree with them are the appropriate
So
sites
that's
for
gonna be in
the
writing?
turbines. Pardon me?
So you're gonna have that in writing for the recreational uses right here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's gonna have to be in writing, because you're gonna be taking away by the
We're not
time.
taking away, I want to promise you, we're not taking away. You're welcome to use the roads if you want that in writing, absolutely. At the previous meeting, one of the councilors, or sorry, it was the mayor, was upset that we had gone to the Trail
Association.
the Trail Association, and we had said that to them, that they could use, come to you in a second, that we could use that they could use the trails, and they said, well, why didn't you come to us? And we said, of course you can use the trails, right? It was, you don't have an association, so there's nothing to come to, but now you're asking us, can you use the trails? Of course you can. We're not going to say the only people that can use the trails are people from Stephenville. Anybody can use the darn trails.
Yeah, so it's safe then to
Yeah, absolutely.
drive within
Absolutely.
the perimeter of the...
Absolutely, absolutely, yes, it is. I've got a question over here, I'll come back.
I know you were talking about the winds around the Port Peninsula and how it would be favorable for you
Yeah.
and your company to erect these wind turbines.
Yes,
But I guess my question for you is the Port Peninsula the only favorable location in all of Newfoundland for the erection of 164
Yeah.
turbines? And why did you decide to congest 164 wind turbines on our peninsula when there is a vast
Yeah.
majority of land and all
okay,
wind
so
turbines
great question.
basically
That's
placed?
a fantastic question, and a very legitimate one. So, the major costs of the project are the building and the erection of the turbines, the building of the hydrogen plant, and then delivering the electricity from the turbines to the hydrogen plant, right? That's a very, very significant cost. So the further away the wind turbines are from the hydrogen plant, the more expensive the project becomes. So what we want to do is we want to get our wind turbines as close to the hydrogen plant as we possibly can. So the 3 sites in the Stephenville area that are suitable for this project are the Port Peninsula, which is the site that we're discussing now, the Lewis Hills site, and then the site over in Flat Bay, right?
So why not choose them?
Can you start with Lewis Hills first?
We are going to be building all 3 sites at the same time. The permitting process, at the government's request, they wanted to cope with each site individually.
So how many wind turbines will be in those areas?
They'll be exactly the same number, roughly 160, 165. Each one is designed to produce a gigawatt of electricity, and so you take 164 turbines. Each turbine is 6 megawatts, so that's roughly 1,000. So each site will produce the same amount of electricity.
I also have another question.
Yeah.
I had a lot of residents approach me and ask me to ask on behalf of the town.
Yeah.
Seeing as we're going to have so many wind turbines here in our area, and I know you said there's benefits that come with the cons and stuff like that, but will we see a reduction in our light bill, seeing as we will be surrounded by so many wind turbines, and will that benefit us financially?
Yeah. So the answer is no, because we're not playing hydro. You pay whatever the rate is, and that's the rate. The benefit you will see, so there are direct benefits and indirect benefits. The indirect benefits are, though, Tim Hortons will sell more coffee, Walmart will sell more products.
Prices of housing will go up.
Yeah, I mean, those are all
Ours will
indirect
go
benefits.
down.
The direct benefits, sorry, here's the direct benefits, 3 direct benefits, right? Jobs, that's direct benefit number 1, very easily measurable. How many jobs, what's the salary, equals the amount of economic benefit to the region. Second benefit, taxes. We've had that discussion, and we've said we're happy to enter into an agreement with the service districts and the Port Peninsula as a whole, and we will pay proportional to what we're paying in Stephenville. No problem. The third benefit is, sorry, I lost my train of thought, that's a direct benefit. That's the tax benefit, and how your service district and how your town, if you've got an incorporated town, decides to use those tax revenues, it's entirely up to you. We don't have any control of that. We pay you the payment in lieu of taxes, and what you do with it, you're the elected council, you decide that. We don't have any say in that.
How many full-time jobs are created for 164 turbines for maintenance?
Yeah, so it's not the turbines themselves. The plant and the turbine maintenance will be 250 people.
Not the plant, just the...
After.
There'll be about 50 people on turbine maintenance.
50 people.
Yeah.
So we all have turbines for
50
25
full-time
Sorry,
jobs.
there's no seasonal aspect to this whatsoever.
And again, those are conservative numbers.
Yeah.
So if you move the place, you're going to get the place, and you bring the turbines in, okay?
Yeah.
And you're talking about big,
Yeah.
so you're talking about.
Yes.
You know our roads are deplorable.
Yeah.
You know, we're on our roads. You
Well-
can't haul these big trucks, these big turbines.
Well, first of all, the good thing
Sorry, what we
is,
have.
first of all, they don't weigh anything, right? They're very, very light, so they don't weigh anything. The issue is they're big, right?
Yeah.
But if you think about it, because the columns comes in sections, right? The problems are not the columns, because they come in sections. Problems are the blades, because the blades are made of composite material, which is very light, right? It's not heavy at all, but it's very long. And so, can you get around corners, and, do you have to remove a telephone pole or do something else? There will be those issues. For the site on the hills and up by Corner Brook and the site over here, we will probably figure out how to deliver turbines to those sites via barge, right? And get them right into the site so we don't have to go over long road distances. We're not going to be able to, for instance, take turbines from our Port Cedar Hill up to the Risley site on those logging roads. Not going to happen, right? So,
From what I understand, the blades can't be recycled, so do you have a plan at the end of 25 or 30 years, what you're going to do with all of these blades? Like,
yeah.
There's
So-
three for turbines,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we've got the benefit now of many of the original wind farms that were built are now nearing the end of their then useful life. In those days, technology has improved since then, and that useful life service life was about 20 or 25 years. And so the industry is now dealing with, okay, what do we need to replace? They're determining that the composite blades actually have a much longer service life than originally thought, but the nacelles, the turbines themselves, the turbine units that generate the electricity, have to be replaced. So, and they're, the good thing is the industry's figured out how to make them more efficient and so on. So what's happening with the replacements now is, of course, the towers are made out of steel, the blades, as you say, are made out of composite. They'll put a new turbine in place, which will presumably add another 20 or 25 years of shelf life to that particular tunnel, or to that particular turbine. In our case, and in all new cases now across the country, we have to promise to decommission at the end of 35 years, right? We have to promise to decommission. An earlier question we had was, well, what if you go bankrupt and you're not around at the end of the 35 years, and who pays for the decommission? And governments have become smart about that because they've been stung a couple of times in other industries, not in this industry, about companies going bankrupt. So we have to post a bond that essentially guarantees that at the end of 35 years, we can decommission the project if the government decides they want the project decommissioned, as opposed to us being able to replace whatever it is we have to replace to carry on for another 35 years.
So there's not going to be a huge graveyard of blades
No.
in the middle of the peninsula again.
No, absolutely.
What is the bond? How much is it?
The bond will be what the government determines. The government will determine that.
I know you mentioned that once these access roads are created or whatnot, that everyone will be able to have access to them,
Yes.
free access to them.
We're not plowing them in the wintertime.
Okay, yeah. I guess my second question is, a lot of questions that I had was, will hunting still be permitted in these areas? And will people still be able to cut their firewood around these
Absolutely,
windmills?
absolutely. In fact, this question came up at the last meeting, and a very legitimate point was made, well, we're going to cut down a bunch of trees. We don't think we're going to cut down a lot of trees, but whatever trees we cut down, we'll pile the wood by the side of the road, and people are welcome to it.
Yeah, but once it's done, it's done.
Yes, ma'am.
I also have a question, because I've heard about a wind farm in the U.S. and Virginia.
You heard about what?
A wind farm in the U.S. and Virginia.
Yeah.
And when the company set it up, the manufacturer made contracts with them that they had the right for the maintenance and the job for those windmills for 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
And that was Siemens Company. So I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if you guys were also going with them, or is there a possibility?
No, so that is a service that the wind companies offer, but we're not doing that. Pattern and Northland don't do that. They've got their own teams of people, and we're going to have our own team of people.
So your own team of people are going to be local hires that
Yes,
you are
ma'am.
going to train?
Yes, yeah. We want to create as many local jobs as we possibly can.
How long is the training? Yeah, sorry, is it being cut?
That depends on, so for some engineering, you'll have to go to school and get an engineering degree. If you want to learn how to be a wind farm mechanic, it may only be a one-year vocational program. It depends on the job you're pursuing.
The
college in North Atlantic right now is working on a suite of courses, and I mentioned Liz, Liz Kidd, who we've met with, is going over. She's the president of the College in North Atlantic. I think you all know that. She's going over to the DOB Academy on August 8th. The initial meeting was extremely positive. The courses that the DOB Academy has really dovetail with what the college is starting to set up now. So they're going to meet and try and accelerate that program. We really want to plant the flag here in the area as having the first renewable energy college in North America, and hopefully attract people from the U.S. Eastern Seaboard, but they don't have a lot of these resources in schools, and make this the number one spot for training in North America for renewable energy.
So when you say you're gonna attract people, who are you referring to?
People who want to work on the wind farms that are being built up.
Okay, no, but you said, is it just gonna be, is it gonna be all over, or is it gonna be just particular, say, for example, if you want, people that come from, China or wherever, and they can come over and to be trained, whoever is trained, it doesn't matter where they're from.
I mean, that's really the college's decision. I mean, does Memorial admit foreign students from China? I mean, maybe they do, maybe, I don't know what their policy is, but, you know, obviously what we want to do is we want to create job opportunities for local people. Local people don't have those skills, so we need to train them in those local skills.
So is there gonna be time then? Because you're gonna be starting, you said, probably into 2023?
Yes.
And you hope to be, so how long is these courses going to be?
It depends on the course. So the turbine technician training course that they have on the drawing board now at the college is 1 year. So we'll have time to get people trained up for that activity for sure.
And it depends on the starting point. Like there's lots of industrial people within the province today, within the region, who have the skill sets and it's transferable. So inside of the electromechanical, the mechanical, the electrical and controls, there's all kinds of people in this area today that would have transferable skill sets from working in other industries that are immediately relevant here, right? So it's not that it's highly unique. A lot of the skill sets are base skills that skilled tradespeople, red seal people have today, and it's a matter of going and saying, okay, I already have the base in place, now let's make it more specific to wind technology.
You were saying earlier about the proximity of the windmills to the communities, and you said the closest was 700 meters.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the remainder, so that was one turbine?
Yes.
And the remainder of the 163 were 1 kilometer?
4 more.
4 more. So there are cases where it's 2 and 3 and 4 kilometers,
Yes,
because, I mean,
Yes.
you see it here,
Yes.
it's all over the mountain, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but you're willing to work with communities to, if we're not happy with the 1 kilometer, to push that back to 2 kilometers or 3 kilometers or what have you, as long as you can keep your pattern in some sort of.
Yeah, what I'm promising is, look, we will listen to you. I don't know what you're going to ask us to do, so I can't promise what our answer is going to be, but we will be reasonable if you're reasonable.
Yeah.
So, and I'm just thinking back about our earlier conversation, because I think we've got to get this right. And so our earlier conversations went around picking several members of the community and sending them around. So I'd like to ask the following. First of all, I think 3 or 4 people is not enough, because I think that group of people has to be representative. Right? Can't take 3 people from one community and nobody from any of the other communities. That's not fair, right? And the second thing is, I don't want people who have made up their mind before they come that they're against this, right? That's not fair either. You got to bring
You
people.
know, I was before I arrived, but now I'm not for it, I'm not against it, I just need more information, and.
You just got on the committee.
Right? The thing is, I didn't have any information.
Sure, no, fair enough. And we want to give you information. We want to give you information.
But you
So-
have to be flexible with the people too, because this is a big shock for the
Yeah.
area.
Okay, so here's my
Right?
proposal. I was trying to get to a proposal.
Yeah.
So there are 7 communities, is that right? I've got 7 communities on the Port of Portland.
Well, there's 3 towns,
Yeah, 3
and
towns.
there are a multitude of local service districts, probably about 4 or 5 local service districts in total. About that? No, I mean,
22.
no, 22 communities.
Okay.
Not 100 local service.
So look, we will work with 10 people. We will work with 10 people, and my request is that the 10 people be broadly representative of the Port of Port Peninsula, so we don't get one community saying, well, we're Port of Port East, and we didn't get an opportunity to put anybody on that group. Okay? So, is that reasonable? So,
Yes.
who is going to run with this? Our mayor?
We have to get together,
Yeah,
all our LSPs,
Yeah.
all our towns,
yeah,
our committees,
Yeah.
our councils,
Yeah.
Among
our
us.
committees.
Yeah.
We have to decide, we're gonna have to get a group together,
Yeah.
right? We have to get a group,
Yeah.
and then from that group, they'll decide.
okay. And the minute that you have a group together, we will immediately fly you where you need to fly you.
I have to say on their behalf, you have to cover your consent.
Yeah.
On June 28th, when I sent that letter
Yeah.
to John and Sean,
Yeah.
I say within hour, they replied to us.
Yes.
They replied immediately.
Why did it take so long for it to come up to the residents?
Now,
Sorry.
saying they
Why,
replied.
so you sent the letter to John, and within a half an hour or so, you got a reply, so why did it take so long to come to the residents?
That was
No,
it.
that's a fair question. Just a minute. I'm a busy guy.
No, let's talk, you talk to the mayor.
Oh, I see.
You responded to the mayor. It's the mayor's job to let the residents know. Why did it take so long?
June the 28th, we did, they, as soon as they agreed to come see us, we let the community know through our social media.
The night you were here, Leroy? The night you were here,
You
Leroy?
were here.
Yeah, I know the church.
So
Anyway, let's try to be productive here.
Yeah.
We've still got some more questions. so-
Okay, yes, yes.
So,
While we were talking about the jobs, that's not my question, but I know we've asked it amongst ourselves. In your plan, you have, you're telling us you're going to build a construction camp in Stephenville for 600 people. And if you're hiring locally, and people live here,
yeah,
and they can walk or quad or motorcycle
Yeah.
or bicycle to work, and a lot of it is construction, which is road building and concrete work, and that, there's a lot of experience here.
there is.
So why is there a dormitory or construction for 600 if you're hiring locally, like?
Because exactly what you said. We're going to be hiring people from the local area who don't want to live in a construction camp. They want to go home at night. So the camp is for people, specialist skill sets that we've got to bring in primarily for the electrolyzer plant and the hydrogen facility. So our 2 contractors for all the roads are Tenacon, big Newfoundland company, and Dexter, who also do a lot of work here. They tell me they take from the west coast of Newfoundland between 400 and 600 people a year. They take up to their various northern sites in Labrador and so on. And they tell me that 99.9% of those people are going to want to work at the project here. And they all live here. Well, that's great. We don't have to provide a construction camp for them because they live here.
But I've also heard with people talking, a lot of talking that you're going to bring in foreign workers, or maybe under the foreign worker program, that they're not actually going to be local workers.
No, absolutely.
I would like to ask
I promise
something.
you that. Now, I can't promise you that for a very specialized skill around, the electrolyzer, we don't need somebody who's got that skill for 3 weeks to help us install it or something. I can't promise that, no. But for things like foundations, for all the turbines, all the erection work, all the road work, absolutely, 100% local people.
It'd be much more expensive for us to bring in foreign workers for skills that are available.
And the other thing I just remind that said, inside the submission to the province, what we've done is assume worst case scenarios so that we don't have to go back and reapply for something more. So we put in a camp number that we knew that potentially would never achieve that number as well.
Or be, yeah.
Right?
I would like to ask a question out here. on your land use arrangement with, about the Crown lands.
Yes.
We're talking about the Crown lands.
Yeah.
In your package, you said that you've made an application,
Yes,
and then I see that it's for Area A, and it's 11 parcels of land.
yeah.
Now, today I was told that that encompasses, because I was asking what's the acreage of that, and is it 13,500 hectares is in the 11 parcels of land?
Yeah, but
Okay.
here's the nuance, which is important you understand. The province is not giving us any land at all. What they're effectively going to be doing is leasing us
Yeah.
the right to put 164 turbines within that 13,000 hectare piece. We're not getting 13,000 hectares, right? If you look at the red circles around that and you add up all that territory,
Yeah.
yes, it comes to 13,000 hectares. But the province is not giving us title to that land. We're not asking for title to that land.
No, I
We're just
understand.
saying within that 13,000 hectares, we are proposing to put 164 turbines.
Okay. What was the date of the application?
It was within a week of the government announcing that a moratorium was lifted. So early May, I think.
No, the announcements were in April.
Which application are you referring to?
The application for Crown land, what was the date of the application?
I have to go back and check, but to John's point, I think.
Sometime in May.
I think it was within 10 days to 2 weeks.
Okay, and were letters of intent filed?
I don't think we've signed any letters of intent, no.
Well, the letters of intent, you have to file under Crown land application when you're near a body of water, when you're near a pond or a river or whatever.
Yeah.
And we have like Big Pond and Three Sisters, and your towers are going right by them, so
Yeah.
that's what letters of intent for.
Yeah, so let me just tell you about the sort of granularity of what's going on inside the province and our relationship with them, right? So Cabinet made a decision that it was going to lift the moratorium, made a public announcement of
Yeah,
that.
we know that.
Legally, that has not gone through the legislature yet.
Yeah.
So the moratorium is still in place,
Yeah.
right? And so many of the things that we need to do to complete our application haven't been done because Crown Lands are saying, well, technically, we haven't, we know the government has announced, we're dealing with your application in good faith, but we're not legally able to do anything yet because the moratorium is still technically in place.
Well, actually, a Crown land application is not actually connected to the moratorium. This is a separate
Yeah, but they
application.
can't, the point is that they can't pursue the Crown land application when there's a moratorium specifically prohibiting what we intend to use the Crown land for.
Okay, so is this then, so once you get the approvals, is this going to be reissued and you're going to
No,
provide your letters of intent?
what the government will say to us is, okay, we're now ready to process your application, and in order for us to do that, we have to enter into these letters of intent and complete the application. So that will happen.
Okay. Okay. So, in the application, have you, for Crown lands, you're required to have 2 witnesses, and they must be seniors, elders of the community, 2 individuals that are familiar with the land. So who are those 2 people that you
They
have?
haven't been chosen yet.
So,
The government hasn't requested that of us.
well, it's part of the
They will.
application.
No, but we haven't, the government is saying to us, look, we're acting in good faith here. We're trying to help you, but we're not legally able to accept your application yet because there's still a moratorium in place.
So it hasn't really officially gone in then?
That's right. Yes.
Because what I'm getting at here is because these requests for Crown lands have to be announced, publicized to the public. This is a public process in the Newfoundland Gazette. And then we as the public have 30 days to
Yeah.
object.
Yeah.
So when does that process, you say you filed the application,
Yeah.
but when does our process come?
Look, honestly, I'm not intimate enough with the process, and
Okay.
because we're sort of in a legal, gray area, given that the province really has said they're lifting the legislation, but the legislation hasn't technically been.
Okay. I have one more question connected to that, because when you apply for Crown lands,
Does anybody, excuse me, anybody mind if I open a window just a little?
no, because it's
Good?
When when you apply for Crown land,
Yeah.
the instruction is, applications require reference to the public land inquiry map, which is available online, to determine if there are any limitations or restrictions on the Crown lands that would, any conflict of interest, on the map that you are required to refer to, there are 2 areas identified in the Border Port, or Cape St. George community. The first one is a protected wildlife area on bird colonies, and it's on the official government of Newfoundland map. And the second one is our protected watershed, and it's a large area up here, okay? But your project places turbines in operational area within those areas. Why is that? And isn't our water catchment protected by law?
Yeah, so my answer to that is the government will determine whether or not that's an appropriate use of that area, and the watershed area may not, the placing of turbines in the watershed area may not give rise to any issues in respect of the quality of the water or so on. So, but again, look, I'm not the government. The government has the authority here to do what it wants to do, and they will decide whether or not turbines in those areas are appropriate or not.
Okay.
And where those areas are governed by the town of St. George's boundaries, then clearly the authority is the town of St. George.
I would like to ask you gentlemen, I would like to ask you gentlemen, do you know where we draw our drinking water from?
I don't.
We get it from brooks. We get it from the mountain streams.
Mhm.
Okay, so how, if you are clear cutting and you're putting in these great big, areas and the pads and water flows down the mountain, downstream.
Yeah.
And there's going to be issues with dust and silt and runoff, and when you make these corridors, you use Roundup and herbicide. How is our water aquifer going to be protected?
We need to make sure it is. We can't do anything to contaminate your water. Completely agree. There's no argument there at all. It's just off limit.
So if I could, just for a second, because I want to make sure that we all go away with a shared understanding. We highlighted those areas in our submissions, right? And back to John's earlier point, we're being completely transparent. So we highlighted those areas in our submission to the government inside of the project registration as sensitive areas. And we did the same inside of our Crown Lands application as well.
Yeah.
We're not hiding anything. And
Nobody said you're hiding anything.
No, bear with me for a second, just for a second, please. The whole idea is to highlight the sensitive areas so that it drives the discussion to those areas so that we take the right mitigations. And if there's turbines that have to be relocated out of certain sensitive zones, or if there's incremental measures, to your point, that need to be taken to protect the water supply, that we have the right conversation at the front end of the process. So we highlighted those areas intentionally. Inside of the review with government, their assessment back or comments back to us is it's a good submission, and they appreciated the fact that we highlighted sensitive areas. So we're not trying to minimize.
It's a protected area.
To ensure that we have the right conversation at the front end.
Yeah.
Right.
And it may well be that in the end, the government says to us, well, we're only going to approve 152 turbines in total, or some number. I don't know what the number is, right?
So
That's the government's right.
What is that? In all 22 communities, for the most part, are using streams and brooks.
Yeah.
There's very few wells.
Yeah, I understand that.
But a construction site disrupts and disturbs the protected area.
Yeah, and we're going to have to be very careful about that, right? I mean, look, the city of Halifax is 400,000 people. Where does the city of Halifax get all its water from? It gets all its water from lakes around the city. What's happening around those lakes? People are building homes, roads are being built, and there's nothing wrong
But they
with
have a
water
water
quality.
treatment plant. We don't have a water treatment
Then
plant.
we have to be very careful, right? And because we understand we cannot pose a risk to your drinking water. Not just your drinking water, the drinking water of any community on the Port Peninsula. Absolutely. There's no question about it. This gentleman has a question.
That kind of ties into the question that I had.
Yeah.
And that is, for these 164 windmills, you
Yeah.
have to build a road to each area,
Yes,
and you have to put in an electrical grid to connect it.
yes.
So how does that all fit into this picture here?
Yeah, so what happens is the electrical grid that ties all the 164 turbines together will be embedded in the road, it'll be buried in the road. And then underground, yeah. And then what will happen is there's a,
In the rock.
well, we'll be building the road that's on top of the rock. And the DC power line that runs out the Port Peninsula now, that same right-of-way will carry the cable from the wind farm here, because there'll be a collector, right? There's something called a substation, in which all the 164 turbines feed, and then that gets transferred up to a DC line, which will go in that same corridor that exists now back to the plant. And very luckily, it just so happens that plant also had a DC line supplying it when it was the pulp mill, so we don't need to generate in the right way.
A couple of questions. So the area is home to like migratory birds, birds of prey, there's
Yeah.
colonies of birds. The EA report says that we'll be doing some mitigating factors to help address the killing of birds.
Yeah.
What are those mitigating factors?
That'll determine, the report that Stantec are doing on bird populations will determine, okay, are there any species at risk? Okay, what are those species at risk? Are those species at risk and endangered, or are they endangered by the wind farms? What are the birds of prey? Are they endangered by the species at risk? What are the migratory bird patterns in the area? Are those migratory birds endangered by the wind thing? Now, the good news is what we know from the database of wind farms around the world is that birds of prey are not largely effective. Eagles are very smart birds, and so we've got data about how many eagles are killed by wind farms, and we're quite happy to kill them. And we understand, although this is your area, you would know it better than we, that the endangered bird species here of most importance is the piping plover. But that's a bird that shoreline bird, and we don't have any wind farms on the shoreline, and the biggest enemy of piping plover are ATVs, not wind farms. So the mitigation depends on the extent of the problem, and the good news is that there are all kinds of already established practices that wind farms can undertake to carry out that mitigation, and the government will look at this report and say, okay, well, we got a problem here, and here's what you're going to have to do to solve that problem. But we won't know that until the report has been produced, which will assess the extent of the problem on those kinds of birds, migratory.
So that study starts when and finishes when?
It's starting now. Yeah, we signed the contract, 2 weeks ago?
With Stantec?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
they did the same study for Atlantic Minerals, did they not? Yes, for the
There's already
expansion.
studies, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
so then did you get your expansion?
That's still in negotiation.
Still in
It's still in the works, isn't it? Yeah. See, the issue we
I
have,
don't think you're gonna get
the full, yeah. The issue we have in our community is we live right next door to the mines.
Mhm.
And we are already polluted. And a lot of neighboring communities as far as Lords, mainland, they're exposed to it here as well because they had to travel through, essentially through the mines to get to Stephenville. And, this project is just adding on to, yeah, exactly, it's taken away from the beauty. Like someone said in a comment last night on the CBC story, it's one gaping hole, and we have no idea what's going on back there, because I wanted to go back there for a tour, and no, it's a safety issue, okay, fine. But the thing is, every year, they're gathering more land, and when you come around the corner of Lower Cove and you look up, it's just so enormous and such an eyesore. And now we're going to have these big turbines to look at. You know, it's just, it takes away from the beauty.
Yeah.
And I mean, I understand the whole hydrogen thing, and I appreciate, you know, all you guys coming here and a great presentation and, you know, great incentives and all that, but when it comes down to it, it just,
It's my comment.
it's hard to back it. It's really hard to
No,
get
so,
your,
one at a time, please.
right? It's hard to get
let's
behind
let's
something like
stay-
this.
Let's stay,
Right?
okay?
Yeah.
So, the purpose of us showing you this video tonight
Right,
was an attempt to say, hey, look,
yeah,
this is not like a European wind farm. I've flown into any of the cities in Europe where there's a lot of wind farms,
Right.
Hamburg, Copenhagen especially, because they're right on the coast. and
yeah.
there's
See,
huge
in
wind
New
farms
Brunswick, that was it.
that are hugely densely
Yeah,
packed. That's not what we have here. We've got more, in most cases, more than a kilometer between wind farms, between turbines, right? These are very widely spaced out.
we're a small
There's not-
area.
There's
Small
there's
area,
not-
but if
there's
you're
not-
doing the loop, you're gonna see all 164 of these wind
Yeah.
turbines. And everybody does the loop.
Yep.
You know, that's part of the beauty
Yes.
of our peninsula.
Yeah.
That's part of our beauty.
So let me tell you something.
Yeah.
One
I
spot.
guarantee you,
You're almost better
that
than
you
one
could
spot.
do the loop and you will
Right.
not see 164 turbines. It's not possible. There's just too many turbines
No.
far enough away from site that you will not see 100. Are you going to see turbines? Yes, you will see turbines,
Yeah.
but you'll see them far apart, right? Not hugely packed. And to some people, it may be very offensive. I get that.
Yeah.
And some people may say, look, I came here to retire.
Yeah.
I don't want these bloody turbines in my backyard, right?
Yeah.
And then there are other people with whom we've met said,
Yes,
this is a great project. How fast can you get
Yeah.
here? Is there going to be a job for my son? Can I keep my kids here? Is this an economic opportunity for my region?
right.
Right? So, look, this is a balance that the community's got to decide upon.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
And do you want jobs in the mine, or do you want jobs in a wind farm? And I'm not here to criticize the mine. I'm not.
No, I mean, I appreciate the employment that comes out of that place, and it's a trickle effect. I mean, it's not just employment for people locally.
Yeah.
It's a trickle effect for business all over, and I
Sure.
appreciate that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll be the first one to say it.
Yeah.
And, you know, we work with them, and but at the end of the day, you know I'm breathing in shit from up there.
Yeah.
Right? It's silica. I'm breathing in that shit because they're running high at night and it's dusty as hell and there's no control. There's no government control over that place. Zero at all. There's nothing. There's no regulatory body going there. And Stantec was the one that did their environmental assessment and set up the dust, monitors. And you know when the dust monitors are operational? When somebody from the environment comes in at a specific time. It's timed. So it's not going off, it's not
Yeah.
constantly being
So,
monitored.
I am-
So
I'm
I'm
here-
just stating that I don't trust the government when it comes
Sure.
to
There's no government-
regulating
there's
these
no
projects. So
Yeah, exactly.
why would I trust them in this situation? And the reason why we weren't privy to this, because they knew we would be against it.
Yeah. So look, here,
Right.
I hear you. So we've come to a good place.
Yeah.
Because what we've said is we are going to take you to a wind farm, or more, 2 wind farms, 3
Yeah.
wind farms.
Yeah.
We will take your representatives, and you will come back and you will report to your community.
Yeah.
This is not a mine site. Again,
Yeah.
I'm not here to criticize mine sites.
Yeah.
But you're not going to have dust monitors for wind turbines.
I know,
So-
it's just another,
And-
Have you heard from them?
Sorry?
Have you heard from the mine?
No.
Because our turbines going
Some of
in
your
the mine
turbines
property.
seem to be right on top of their new,
Yeah,
Yeah.
some kind of agreement, isn't there?
You're gonna hear from them. That's the one positive I see with this. The mine won't be able to expand.
My point is, look, we're here to defend ourselves
yeah,
and to answer your questions, but I'm not here to tell you what your way of life or what your standard of living wants to be. Only you can make that decision. I'm not here to.
We have a beautiful way of life
Right,
right now.
absolutely, and I respect that. Okay, I respect that. So I'm only here to answer your questions, and then you have to make up your minds. Are you supportive or are you not supportive?
Yeah.
Right? And our job is to make sure you make up your minds with the benefit of all the information and answers to all your questions. Then hopefully we'll.
I don't
come to a
have
right
enough,
decision.
I don't have enough information.
I'm not asking you to make up your
Right?
mind. I'm telling you,
Yeah,
I'm not
I
asking.
don't
I'm
have,
not-
not nearly enough information.
And I'm not asking you to make up your mind.
Nothing about it.
All I'm saying is,
Yeah,
is that there will be,
Yeah,
We're going to close off this meeting,
Okay.
after another 2 questions.
okay.
okay.
I've got one. If I hear you correctly over the last couple of hours, what you said is that you're willing to put together, or you're willing to see a committee of about 10 people representing most of the peninsula or all of the peninsula, to go and have a look at the wind farms that currently exist, to
Yes.
monitor, see what the complaints are from the people around it,
Yes.
see what noise there is and so on.
Yes.
And secondly, that in the incorporated areas where there is a municipality, that if they don't like the place where you're planning to put the windmill, they say, no, it's gotta move farther back because it's too close.
I've said that we will engage,
Yeah.
and, because we're not going to get into a conversation where people say, collectively, we've decided we don't want any wind farms, wind turbines on the Port of Port Peninsula. Now, if that's the unanimous opinion of the people of the Port of Port Peninsula, unanimous, we will move away.
I haven't said that.
You need 3 sites.
What I understand you saying.
Yeah, to make it economic.
What I understand you saying is that in incorporated areas, it's government policy and your policy, that if there is a turbine located in a place that's close to a house or in a place that's
We will move
really
it.
inappropriate, you'll move it.
And if we can't move it, we'll lose it.
So it's after the committee has done its work, reported back and said, okay, under these circumstances it'll work, and then they look at it. Where all of the ones you propose to put, and they say, okay, these 5 or 6 here seem to be too close, we'd like to see them move back another kilometer, and that's gonna work?
That's the conversation we're prepared to have. And I'm promising you, we will be reasonable. I can't, look, it's all hypothetical. You're saying, is it gonna be a kilometer, maybe half a
I
kilometer?
don't know.
I don't know, exactly. Well, I don't
That's the
know either.
point. That's why
I'm
we
telling
have
you,
to
I'm
have
willing to
a
have the conversation, and you will find me to be very reasonable.
And the last piece was that there will be some revenue to the municipal
Yes.
authorities on the peninsula
Yes.
as a result of what is going on.
Exactly, yes. Yes.
One more question.
Yeah, one more question. Who wants to?
Okay,
This gentleman here is.
You're saying you're training people to work at the wind turbines.
Yes.
So how, you know the state of the hospitals around here, the first responders. So now you're gonna have an influx of workers here, and all this, so how are you gonna incorporate that with the first responders in the town?
Yeah.
And we're all volunteers,
Yeah,
right?
sure. So we think that we will be good for your healthcare system. Why will be good for your healthcare system? Because there is tremendous pressure on your healthcare system province-wide, not just here in the Port of Port Peninsula right now. There was a big article, I don't know whether you saw it, in the national newspaper yesterday about how doctors are leaving rural Newfoundland. Fogo Island, for the first time in 200 years, doesn't have a doctor. Bell Island lost its last doctor.
We don't have one.
You don't have one. So, economic activity will generate, and the need for more healthcare will generate the revenue necessary to. We've had a conversation already about the hospital and the need for a new clinic. We've said we'll make a very substantial contribution to that. So, this is an area where somebody asked me, Sarah asked me about benefits, right? And I just didn't mention it when she asked. We see that as something that is on everybody's minds. Quality healthcare is on everybody's minds. So we are prepared to respond to that in a meaningful way, not tokenism, not a $50,000 or $100,000 one-time grant. We will do something. So let's have a conversation about that, and I think you'll find us being willing to do something which the community will say, wow, that's a big deal.
Okay, so that's for the healthcare. I'm now there for your firefighting services and your ambulance service.
Yeah,
Now, one ambulance is not gonna cut it, okay, we got a fire department, I'll speak for the fire department, the fire chief.
Yeah.
We have 19 people, so
Yeah.
are you gonna need specialized training if your fire happens on your
yeah.
site?
If there's, so we will have our own safety in the hydrogen plant,
Yep.
and our people will be full-time employees. We can't rely on a volunteer department. So that will all be sort of looked after. With respect to, look, if the population increases as a consequence of the jobs that we're able to attract, and not only the jobs that we're able to attract, but the indirect jobs caused by, the other businesses, then the tax base will improve, and there'll be more money for volunteer fire departments and more money. It's not going to be our job to support the purchase of another fire engine.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that, I'm saying what, if there's any other specialized training required for a fire department to service
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Well, the good news is that fires aren't caused in wind turbines, so that's not going to be a problem. The problem is going to be at the plant, and we'll have our own safety protocols and our own people. So, and just on that point, so the healthcare issue is something that, again, we're willing to engage with the community on. And once we reach our FID point, which we talked about earlier, September or October, that's a conversation we're prepared to have.
Okay. On that note, we're going to close it out. First of all, I wish to thank the company. That was a great presentation. And I'm asking the people, we will put together a blurb to put on social media to include all our communities, all our towns. We have to set up the meeting. So we'll put the blurb on to set a time, and we'll find a place to meet. That's going to be quite a lot, I would say.
Is this supposed to be before like July 26th?
This is going to be very,
Yeah.
it has to be
Or
very
is this
soon.
after?
So it has to be very soon, so we'll get together, our council will get together after. If the LSD people want to stay, it's up to you. And we will set a time within a week to all get together, okay? And I don't know if you're going to represent all the LSDs like you are tonight.
No, if you're all invited, if we have
they
room,
will.
if we have room, they'll be here.
Because we've got Sharice here from
Yeah.
mainland.
Yeah, we have to invite all the committee,
Absolutely.
not just one person.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? Because if we have been elected to
Represent the people.
represent the people,
Yeah.
the people who, why represent people if they don't let us represent them?
Exactly.
So we were represented
Yeah.
to handle this.
Yeah.
So the people gotta start having faith in us
Yeah.
to do what's right.
Yeah.
Now you're talking probably 150 or 200 people are going to get together
Yeah.
to speak about this. If we can't make a decision, why have council for that?
Yeah.
So I'm asking everyone to be, wait, within a week, we have to meet. I'll tell you that, within a week.
And Mayor, if I can add, thank you. We're happy to come back. This isn't the last time you get to talk. We'll come back again, and if you have more questions, or you want to sort of come together with a list of questions or something, or you want us to bring somebody,
I'd like to have a business card if you don't mind.
a what?
A business card?
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
yeah, of course.
Yeah, I was
But
gonna ask you.
my point is, that, look, it's going to be over a year before we start construction, or a year before we start. We've got lots of time to talk, and we will find us very communicative and coming back and support. I'll talk to you afterwards. So.
Our big concern is this deadline.
Yes.
The
Very
environment.
short, very short.
I believe, I'm not sure, just hold on. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure we can get that extended. Do you know anything about that, Peter?
I doubt it. The Department of the Environment has a deadline, and that's what they want. So you're gonna have to make a
You have to
presentation.
go through
Now,
Tony
what you
Wakeham
should do
and
is
petition.
make a presentation to them saying, we would like a delay in order to put in proper legislation.
Yes,
Because they've got
absolutely.
that crummy little piece of legislation for the East Coast one, and tell them, it's time to start getting proper legislation in place. Because that's our problem right now. We have no rules. We don't know what's going
Yeah,
on.
but if you remember what my conversation was, that we're not responding to that legislation. We've gone well beyond that in our application.
No, I know that, but the province does have a role here, and they haven't been playing it. So they've got to
And
do
we
something.
have public consultation deadlines, the end of July, before legislation and environmental and all the rules and regulations have been, nothing has been, how do we know your project's going to comply with what the government says, and we don't have a chance to review because...
Well, because we won't get permitted to proceed if we don't comply. We have to comply. I mean, that's the will of government.
But
right?
what are you complying with? We don't
With-
have any
with the
We don't
regulations.
have a lot of faith, we
Regulations.
don't have a lot of faith in that
I mean, then you
process.
should toss the government out and get new government.
Well,
Any government that you've got is going to have the authority to decide on your behalf. That's the law of government.
Actually, there are regulations that they're enclosed in the town plan for the town of Stephen, for the town of Cape St. George. And that town plan actually has the wilderness area in it, and it has a planning zone that includes probably about 40 of your rural turbines. So on that basis, basis there, you're gonna have to go through the town for a lot of that, and they're gonna have to say, this is the place where you can't put it because it's too close to the end of the gate where the birds are, or it's too close where houses are in March's Point, which does seem like looking at it
But
superficially.
there's two here,
Yeah.
there's no way they should be there.
Yeah, no, the ones at the end of the Cape are just, no.
It's in our park.
Yeah.
Okay,
Anyway,
well, look,
regulations
thank
on-
you for this opportunity to speak to you. As I say, we're welcome to come back. The other meeting we had at Lourdes asked us to get some specific information. We are going to do that. We'll share it with you, and we'll look forward to you appointing the committee that's going to work with us on this payment in lieu of taxes, and the group of 10 people who we're going to take to Wind Sites. And as soon as you can put that together, we'll get them around.
This is our sacred spirit white moose that are particular to the Border Fort Peninsula and Kippens. And one of the questions I wanted to ask, where did all the animals go? And will there be
Hello, sorry, no more questions. We closed